Sinclair's ABC stations instead will air a special in remembrance of Charlie Kirk this Friday. Amazing. During Jimmy Kimmel Live's time slot. Eat it, Jimmy!
But you don't get to go on a podcast and set policy for American media, for an American media institution that's been around.
Yes, you do, actually. That's the whole point. Like, that is what the FCC is. They do set policy. You just don't like this policy.
Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Lefties freaking out over the Kimmel firing. Van Jones says, this is the red line. We've got dumb comedians saying, we have to act. These are the end days, essentially. And even the Democrats subcommittee is now opening up a probe into this, and they're getting ready for a full press conference because this is like a 5-alarm fire for them. One of their top propagandists is now getting booted off the cables, and they're going to try to make this into some scandal or something other than the fact is that his show stinks. His ratings have been in the toilet. No one thinks he's funny anymore. They've turned into ranting, just whiners constantly. Colbert's gone. He was losing money for them. I'm sure Kimmel was losing money for them. And so the list goes on and on, right? This era of the late night show is just kind of over. People have moved on. It's not that interesting. They're not that funny. So he's getting nuked, but they're going to turn this into a Trump scandal. And so one of the biggest media drama queens who's out there is called Brian Stelter, Mr. Potato Head. He says, breaking, one of the country's biggest owners of ABC stations called Nextstar says it's going to preempt Jimmy Kimmel's show for the foreseeable future because it strongly objects to recent comments made by Kimmel concerning the killing of Charlie Kirk. But there's a lot of reaction in the follow-up. So Nextstar, the company who's actually being referenced there, they said, we now announce that the company's owned and partner television stations that are affiliated with ABC will preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live for the foreseeable future beginning with tonight's show. We strongly object to recent comments made by Kimmel concerning the killing of Charlie Kirk and will place the show with other programming in its ABC affiliated markets. Now, his comments about the death of Mr. Kirk, they say, are offensive and insensitive at a critical time in our nation and our national political discourse. And we do not believe they reflect the spectrum of opinions, views, or values of the local communities in which we are located. Continuing to give Kimmel a broadcast platform in the communities we serve is simply not in the public interest at the current time. And these are public airwaves. So if it's not in the public interest, then what is he doing on the public airwaves? And we have made the difficult decision to preempt his show in an effort to let cooler heads prevail as we move toward the resumption of respectful, constructive dialogue. And they say, we're a big entity. We've got a lot of different markets. We have to represent a lot of different people. And we don't want this crap on our stations. Now, the reaction to this is they're saying, well, Nextstar is like right in the middle of this merger. Jake Tapper's like, oh, this is political. So Nextstar is just like kowtowing to the Trump administration and just bending the knee for them and canceling people so that they'll approve the merger deal and all the things. But the fact is, there's a whole nother entity called Sinclair who's also saying the same thing. Sinclair says that Kimmel's suspension is not enough. And they say that their stations are instead going to air a remembrance of Charlie Kirk. Okay, so it's not just like one company who wants a merger deal. It's Sinclair. They also say that Sinclair is the nation's largest ABC affiliate group. We object to recent comments made by Kimmel as well. And as discussed with ABC earlier today, we're going to preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live. His remarks were inappropriate. We believe broadcasters have the responsibility to be respectful and elevate constructive dialogue. We appreciate also the FCC and the chairman's remarks today about the critical need for regulatory action in the wake of this propaganda on our public airwaves. Sinclair's ABC stations instead will air a special in remembrance of Charlie Kirk this Friday. Amazing. During Jimmy Kimmel Live's time slot. Eat it, Jimmy! The special will also air across all Sinclair stations this weekend. In addition, Sinclair is offering the special to all ABC affiliates across the country, and they better run it. Sinclair will not lift the suspension on the Jimmy Kimmel on his show on our stations until formal discussions are held with ABC regarding the network's commitment to professionalism and accountability. And we also call on Jimmy to issue a direct apology to the Kirk family. Furthermore, we asked Mr. Kimmel to make a meaningful personal donation to the Kirk family and at Turning Point USA. That's not going to happen. Now, Sinclair says also, and regardless of ABC's plans, whatever they want to do, Sinclair, our group, okay, so like Disney syndicates this out. So this group owns a bunch of TV stations and these markets over here owned by this other company. So Sinclair says ABC can continue to run it, but we We don't want it on our show until we're confident that appropriate steps have been taken to uphold the standards that are expected of a national broadcast platform. And so Sinclair is joining in. And then what ultimately happened is Disney's like, oh crap, there's like open revolt out there. So we have to now just pull the show. And that's what happened yesterday. So here is the clip that caused this firing, deservedly so. Here's Jimmy Kimmel coming out and lying about the assassin who killed Charlie Kirk.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger...
Okay, so lie, first of all, this guy's a left-winger. He shot Charlie Kirk, one of the president's best friends. So why would an assassin who's a MAGA person do that? It makes no logical sense at all, but they don't want to think logically because they're Democrat libtards. So anyways, in addition, he's also saying that we're using this to attack them, all right? We didn't do that. They came out and started making ridiculous videos. We were holding candlelight vigils, saying prayers, mourning the death of somebody that we loved, recognizing that we're in a war, obviously, since they're shooting and killing people. And they were the people publishing repeatedly video after video, celebrating, dancing, doing twerking and all sorts of disgusting things, salivating in the bloodlust of a dead opponent. And now Kimmel is smearing all of it, right? It's just propaganda because that's what many of these entities are. I think that they're basically extensions of the intelligence agencies. They used to be very effective. Now they're not.
There was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks. They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. Okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. There's demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
All right, so inappropriate lies at the beginning. So now Jimmy Kimmel is gone. And man, they're freaked about this, okay? Chuck Schumer came out, and you've never even heard him so mad. Look, it's like immediate after it happened. He says, I'm outraged. Like, hey, Chuck, where were you when Tucker was fired, or when Roseanne Barr was fired, or where were you outraged by the political assassination that just took place a week ago? Nowhere to be found. Okay, nowhere to be found. Instead, when Kimmel gets cut off, he was their cover, man. He was like holding a shield out there, trying to make everything jokey on behalf of the Democrats, trying to seed propaganda into the brains of the people who still watch that show. Look how mad he is. Look at his face. I love that show. I watch it when I fall asleep every night.
Senator Schumer, your reaction to this?
It is outrageous. It's a page right out of Xi's playbook.
Wow.
This is just despicable, disgusting, and against democratic values. Trump and his allies seem to want to shut down speech that they don't like to hear.
No.
That is not what democracies do. That is what autocracies do. And it doesn't matter whether you agree with Kimmel or not. He has the right to free speech.
He has it. He can go start a YouTube channel like everyone else and join Don Lemon and see how that works out for him. He's not entitled to a job, you weird people. He's entitled to say whatever he wants. He did. Words have meaning. That's why we say things. So he said what he wanted to say, and now he's gone. And that feels like the free market at work. Isn't it a beautiful thing?
And so it is just outrageous. It is indicative of autocracy, and I am just outraged by it. Again, this is what dictators do. This is what Xi would do. This is what Putin would do. We are not that country.
So that's interesting. Xi and Putin. I know they're not talking Hitler and the Nazis anymore. Is that because the bullet had "Hey, fascist" catch? So what is he implying? Do you think that maybe because we're living in an autocracy now that there should be more political violence? Because we didn't really hear Chuck Schumer get so outraged and put on his pouty face to come on CNN a week ago. Now there's a lot more on this. They say Jimmy Kimmel was planning to address the Charlie Kirk remarks last night. Disney and ABC leadership elected to hit pause because of the pressure, and then Disney and leadership hopes to have the matter resolved and to have the show return, according to this guy over from Puck News. We'll see if that happens. I kind of have my doubts about it. Now, what we see in the aftermath is 24 stations refused to air Kimmel, and then Brian Stelter reported following that there was basically a mutiny. ABC decided to yank the show entirely, right? So They're not going to have some of it being aired and other portions of it not being aired. But Kimmel is now gone, and our friend Maze over at Maze More on X dug this old clip out from Kimmel when he was very excited that Tucker Carlson got fired because somebody at Fox News didn't like his political positions about some topic.
Fox News has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means.
So that's what you got fired too, right?
Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely...
Are you flying over to meet with Zelensky there, bucko?
Delightful shock this is. Now Tucker can spend more time at home tanning his testicles and touching himself to that sexy green M&M. Sadly...
Okay, so I think that, my friend, is confession through projection. Tanning it. What is Jimmy Kimmel into? No wonder nobody watched that show. What a weird even... Is that a joke or something? All right, so that's Kimmel taking glee in the firing of somebody else, and now he's going to be outraged because he got fired. Yeah, that's how this works. Sinclair was not happy about it. And now the Democrats are going nuts. U.S. House Oversight Committee Democrats say that we're going to probe this case. Oh, so if Jimmy Kimmel gets fired, the Democrats race to his defense. But if there's rampant trans violence that's resulting in political assassinations, pretty quiet out there. They'd rather talk about the Epstein files. So we will not be silent as our freedoms are threatened by corrupt schemes and threats. What are you talking about? Anyone who is complicit will need to answer to us. Okay, they're going to launch an investigation after ABC fires Kimmel after pressure from the Trump administration and the public, who is probably disgusted by him. And a lot of people are getting fired. A lot of relationships are ending. You're free to have your position on it. And they did the same thing, okay? They came after doctors who had a difference of opinion on COVID. They came after lawyers who represented President Trump or even adjacent to President Trump to come after their licenses. They locked everybody's business down. And if you were in opposition to that, you were a criminal, a murderer, a monster. You wanted to kill all the grandmas and all the kids who can't get vaccinated, whatever it was, right? We got the story. And now they're saying that this is an egregious offense. In the aftermath of all of that, it's pretty ridiculous. You can just see they love their propagandists, man. Once the facade starts to crumble, once they lose their infrastructure, this is what they do, is they basically set up infrastructure to prop up their ideology. That's why it's always, we got to go build like democracy. It's really like all these institutions like USAID and the Federal Reserve and all these independent boards that are all just propped up to keep those people in power. They hate it. So the media is a major layer to the whole conversation. And now it's just kind of being taken out one after another. And so they're losing and they're freaked about it, as you can see. Now, this is another interesting one. Remember when Kimmel was doing this stuff? Like, how come he wasn't ever canceled for any of this stuff? Remember when he was doing that? Al Franken got thrown out of the Senate for that one photo. And there's Jimmy Kimmel. He also dressed in blackface and did a bunch of other things. But because he was sufficiently, ingratiating, because he accepted his faults and became a good fighter, they accepted him back into the fold. So Sinclair says he's got to go. They had a bunch of statements about it. You can see like multiple tweets we're sharing with you. And Jake Tapper was so mad about this last night, he put on a sweatshirt and made a video about it in his kitchen. And here's what this one says from Jake Tapper.
So how do we make sense of the fact that late night host Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely lost his show because of comments he made Monday night in which he said that the MAGA gang was really trying hard to prove that Charlie Kirk's assassin was not one of theirs so that they could score political points. That's what he said. Well, follow the money. In August...
Okay, so Nextstar. Okay, so follow the money. Nextstar wants FCC approval. So how come Sinclair is also nuking this dude? How come, Jake? And it's weird. I didn't see a video from Jake about the Charlie Kirk assassination. It's weird what is so animating for them, It's like, to them, I guess maybe this is an assassination. This is their political assassination. Jimmy Kimmel got his show canceled because he's terrible. Nobody watches it anyways. And so this is like their JFK, I guess, because they're sick. Even Obama came out. After years of complaining about cancel culture, the current administration has taken it to a new and dangerous level by routinely threatening regulatory actions against media companies unless they muzzle or fire reporters and commentators that it doesn't like. And so he's sharing this. This is the kind of coercion the First Amendment was designed to protect. Obama, yeah, the purveyor of free speech. Okay, so they're out there, and CNN had a short clip over from this guy. Joseph Moreno was over here, former federal prosecutor and contributor. Let's see what he had to say about this over on CNN.
I don't think this is a legal issue. I don't think this can be pointed to the FCC or the Trump administration and say, well, this is about them going after Kimmel because of what he said. Personally, I think it's more of a cultural issue. And I got to tell you, I'm about as moderate a Republican as you're going to get. I'm from New York. I have not been comfortable watching late night television for 15 years. Yeah, because when you have conservative leanings and you're constantly mocked and you constantly feel like you're doing something wrong, you shut it off. You don't watch it anymore. And then what happens is it circulates circular. If the host doesn't have that audience, the host doesn't worry about keeping an audience like that. It goes in circles, and at some point, you get things like this where you say...
Yep, you say stuff like that, and people are grossed out by it, and you're gone. Like, it's not that complicated, okay? And shows have natural life cycles, okay? They're not entitled to this in perpetuity. Lots of shows get canceled. They go for, 5 seasons, and you're canceled. So now this is the natural course. And the public, I think, has shifted away from it, right? The public is becoming more, I think, disconnected from the old mediums and the old messages, like a broken record. They haven't even reinvented or recreated themselves in any way, shape, or form. So just to show you how freaked they are, okay, even Stinky Eric Swalwell, who made Bang Bang with Fang Fang, came out. He put on a Jimmy Kimmel hat. Jimmy Kimmel Live. He says, Jimmy Kimmel has a right to a show on television. Okay, yeah, you wish he did, so that he could protect you.
Yeah, Congressman, I see you are wearing a hat. What does that hat say?
You're damn right I am, John.
Yeah.
I was a guest on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. Every night has a right to come into any house that wants to watch and entertain Americans, just as Greg Gutfeld on Fox has a right to be not funny and go on his network and entertain Americans. It's part of who we are, and frankly, it should shake every American that the President of the United States is out there firing comedians.
He's not. Disney did it, right? Sinclair and Nextstar were the two entities. We don't want this crap on our cables, and maybe we own stations that are in conservative networks, and they're outraged about it, okay? So it's going to be bad for our business if we continue to peddle this garbage and pipe it into their homes. Keith Olbermann is super mad. Burn in hell, Sinclair! Of course, he says alongside Charlie Kirk, because he's a venomous monster, and that's how mad they are, okay? They're way more mad about Kimmel losing a show than they are Charlie Kirk being killed, even Ben Stiller. This isn't right. Great post there, Ben. Well done. And CNN is melting down. Braxton shared this one. Says CNN is in full meltdown after this. And here's a little bit of what they sounded like yesterday.
Stations by taking away their licenses. And throughout the history of the country, ever since we've had broadcast television, license revocations are extraordinarily rare.
Well,
once you've got one, you're pretty much guaranteed to keep it. So the threat is...
Yeah, but that's not how this is going to work anymore. And Kimmel is not entitled to the show or the public airwaves. And the syndicates can cancel him, and they did.
So Van, all of a sudden you see this headline, Jimmy Kimmel, not canceled, put on hold indefinitely by ABC News after the head of the FCC goes on a far-right podcast and says we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And do you think in your mind it's possible this might not be real?
I don't know what's real or what's not real. I do know that
Van Jones.
A news organization anywhere in the world has a responsibility to stand up to government bullying, to government censorship. That is what we do. That is why we exist. Not to knuckle under, not to do what we're told, but to stand up and to say, listen, if you want to pull these licenses, then we're going to go to court. We'll be in the court of public opinion. But you don't get to go on a podcast and set policy for American media, for an American media institution that's been around.
Yes, you do. Actually, that's the whole point. Like, that is what the FCC is. They do set policy. You just don't like this policy.
A lot longer than me, you, or Donald Trump. This is a red line that has been crossed for our industry, for the First Amendment, for the right of people to speak. There was nothing hateful about what was said.
Yeah, it was. It was a total lie, and it was a smear. They were trying to say one of Charlie's own people killed him. Are you nuts? What kind of a stupid statement is that, by the way, anyways? So Van Jones, I said it was a red line that has been crossed, and I don't know what that means exactly. What happens if a red line's crossed? Do they start shooting people? What's coming next from Van Jones and CNN? Maybe they're a part of Antifa, the terrorist organization. So we also saw Brendan Carr came out, and he was on Fox yesterday, and here's what he said on the show.
You can't avoid ratings. At the end of the day, the market is going to be undefeated. And a lot of these corporations, Disney and Comcast, they have been protecting and frankly subsidizing this content. Again, once President Trump smashed that facade, he gave a permission structure to local broadcasters to finally stand up. And when you're losing money, in the case of Colbert, reportedly $50 million, that's only going to go so far. And the same thing with Kimmel. They're now facing the consequences of the choices that they made to appeal to a very narrow audience. Again, you can do that. You can start a podcast. You can go on YouTube.
Yeah, like the rest of us.
If you're going to have a license from the FCC, we expect you to broadly serve the public interest.
Makes sense, because they're public airwaves, and you're not entitled to them. So he is now gone. Here's another one. This guy, Patton Oswalt, is visibly shaken by the news of Kimmel's firing. And he looks like it. He doesn't look good. Yeah, he looks rattled. So he looks even worse than Jake Tapper did. He says, "This is an ancient evil. I meet people every day, every weekend doing comedy, and I know, this is not what they voted for. for. This is an awesome country, and we're handing it over to some bad people, and he just looks terrible. So he's ranting about Kimmel. So like all of Kimmel's friends are coming out of the woodwork, as you can see. Now, Megyn Kelly responded to this, and she says, all right, listen, I'm not sure who needs to hear this, but Jimmy Kimmel got on the air and falsely stated as a fact that Charlie Kirk's killer was MAGA, smearing an entire movement, and Trump in particular with a vile, disgusting lie. And at a time when the threat against those on the right is at an all-time high. And Van Jones is out now saying, well, red line has been crossed with Kimmel. And Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, said that this is what President Xi does. This is what Putin does. This was after we knew from the Utah government that the killer had been indoctrinated into left-wing ideology. After we'd seen the shooter's bullet casings reflect furry and trans memes, calling Charlie a fascist with anti-fascist lyrics, Bella Ciao. It was after we had learned the shooter was living with his trans furry boyfriend and believed that Charlie was full of hate. After we learned that the shooter was not a registered GOP person, but quote, unaffiliated. After we saw him pull the trigger, just as Charlie discussed trans killers, there was zero evidence the shooter was MAGA, had ever been MAGA, or was influenced by MAGA at all. And so this was a direct and specific lie, according to Megyn Kelly, who's been in the media a long time. This was an intentional lie to gin up hatred toward the very group of people who were suffering the most in the wake of the Charlie assassination. And they were gleefully cheering along with a complicit audience. Any employer in media, any employer, would see how depraved and sick this was. And she's worked for many of them. In fact, in 2021, she explains, ABC fired Chris Harrison for saying, well, maybe we should judge a bachelorette contestant's attendance when she years earlier went to an antebellum party by what was considered offensive at the time. Oh, that person put on blackface, Jimmy Kimmel back then. It's like, I guess more people were doing that. I don't get it, but whatever, they did. So, all right, why don't we just it wasn't offensive back then. That's why they were doing it. And so now it's offensive. So we can't judge them now. Fired. They nuked that dude. Fired. And his career never recovered for that little statement. The left doesn't believe ABC was genuinely horrified by Kimmel and instead says this is an FCC threat. But that's because even they know ABC has no moral core. And we agree with you on that. They don't. But what the left doesn't seem to understand and what needs to hear is that MAGA has effing had it. Okay, we are angry. We are incensed watching the left smear us, our people, literally getting some of our friends killed, not to mention our president shot, nearly assassinated again weeks later, and then lying about it. Trump faked his injury. It was ketchup. He wasn't actually shot. We have no idea what the motives are, if they are bad for our side, for them, right? We don't know. They're all playing dumb. Exactly. We've been making that point here, that they're all just like, oh, I have no idea. We're just trying to have a conversation with you, Congressman. I have zero doubt ABC was overwhelmed with absolutely furious calls, comments, and emails from truly fed up viewers and knew it had crossed a deadly serious line. And so in short, good riddance to them. Now, since Kimmel's gone, Marco Rubio, not happy. Here's what actual photo of Marco Rubio looks like when he realized he now has to become a late night talk show host too. Ugh. Well, it will be funnier for sure. I mean, he's got a much better personality than Kimmel does. So he's also going to have to take over ABC. Okay. Now, JD Vance was out talking about this, okay, and is basically echoing Megyn Kelly, like all this both sides crap and all this like feigned ignorance. I don't know why this happened. It's ridiculous, okay? Cut it out.
Who grew up in a pretty normal family, actually had a pretty good home life, who was radicalized by the far left, by the social networks of the far left, by the ideas of the far left, and got so far down the path of radicalization that he killed my friend. That is not a both sides problem. My friend is dead because of left-wing political radicalization, and if you want to cut that out, then be honest about it and look yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, Jimmy, that's for you. Hopefully you have a moment of reflection. We know you won't. Trump was asked about this over in the UK, and Trump nailed it. Nobody likes Jimmy Kimmel. His show stinks, and nobody's watching it anyways.
Your Vice President Vance said that free speech is under attack in the UK. Do you agree with him? And Prime Minister, we saw dismissal of a very well-known chat show host in America last night, Mr. Kimmel. Is free speech more under attack in Britain or America?
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Newt! And that's exactly right. So save your free speech stuff. Okay, you guys in England, you can't even make social media posts without getting arrested for inciting racial hatred or whatever that is, which is ridiculous. So yeah, spare us your lecture, okay? Jimmy Kimmel is a hack leftist, so-called comedian, propagandist, and his shtick is up. That's how it goes. So the show is now hopefully gone forever. We'll see what ABC ultimately does. But man, they're freaked about this. So we've got Democrat probes, Van Jones Jones, red lines, and more. We'll see what they do about this since they're so mad.